Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes' live streams for Inktober 2019. For the last 2 years, I've done a live stream every day for Inktober, and I aim to try to do that again this year. It's definitely a big challenge, especially when you have a full-time job, and when you have a full-time job plus trying to produce weekly videos on YouTube. Definitely a big challenge, but that's part of why I'm doing it. My goal here is basically as simple as I want to become a better artist. Inktober is an event you can look up, and the goal is just to draw something in ink every day. There are official prompts. You do not have to follow them, but I choose to. And today's prompt was ring. Let's see. Oh, I'm getting some folks in the chat room. Hello, Pablo. Nice to see you. I appreciate having someone. It's definitely pretty late as I'm live streaming this. In case you ever watch this in the future, it's already basically 10 p.m. Pacific time. So all I can say is this is when I got home from work, and yeah, so that's about all I can say about that. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more here. But oh, a bunch of people jumping into the chat now. Hello to James, Beowulf, Asman. Hello, Vaughn. Hello, Mr. Stupid and Wrong. Hello, El Mike. Hello, Sophia Murphy. And what else? Hello, Retrobolt. Hello, what is this? Hello, Thomas. Hello, Just Another Monster. Hello, Dracula. That's great. That's great. So I was just saying, the prompt was ring, and I thought of all sorts of characters that could do with ring. I'm probably going with the most obvious, which is something from the movie The Ring, or in Japanese, Ringu. I'm going to try to draw Sadako. Oh, where's my ruler? I cannot find my ruler. Well, I'm just gonna have to use another piece of paper if I want a straight edge, I guess. That's okay. That's a solution, if not the ideal solution. Oh, good. I've got a piece of cardboard here that can work. So, I gave thought to a bunch of comic book characters. I mean, you've got Green Lantern. You've got the Shadow, Flash, everyone on Legion of Superheroes has a Legion ring. The Mandarin from Iron Man comics. There's all sorts of great things that could go with a ring. I guess you could use something like Halo, the video game, that could do with the ring. So there were lots of ideas that popped through my head. And then one that I was thinking very strongly about was something based on the comic book Uzumaki by Junji Ito, which has to do with spirals. But ultimately I decided what I'm going to try to do here is Sadako. So bear with me. I'm just going to try to lightly sketch out what I'm aiming to do here, and then we will get into it. Yeah. It's too low. Get that over. Start a little higher with that idea. And I will try to read any questions that come through. I'm definitely looking. Yeah. So, and if I get quiet, it's just because I'm concentrating on the artwork, but I promise I'm looking at the chat as often as I can. Because I love talking to you guys. That's a big part of why I do this. The other part is just to sort of keep myself honest. If I feel like there's an audience, then I can't not do this, or at least I have to give it my best shot. If that makes sense. So let's see. Is anybody asking any questions yet? Oh, you can't even really see that too well. Did I like Ringu or Ring better? I'll say that I did prefer Ringu, and the reason isn't just that it's the original, it's the one that I saw first. I think that they're both really good interpretations, but I also think that like whichever one you see first has more of an impact on you. And that just happened to be the one I saw first. Was Ringu. Let me just see if I can zoom in a little bit, and maybe that'll help things show up a little better. So I'm gonna do that. Oh, and it's also upside down, isn't it? Darn it! Hold on. This happened last night. Let me flip this real quick, everybody. Oh, it's not upside down. It's not upside down. I got it right. Okay. Have I seen the first issue of Harleen yet? No, I don't know what Harleen is, I'm afraid. Somebody will have to explain that one to me. I don't want to spend too long on my underdrawing here, just because the point of Inktober is, of course, to work on your inking. So there may even be days where I've completely done a sketch, but I figured it was worth starting Inktober by doing like a full illustration from scratch, because then you at least know that I'm really doing it, right? Yeah, I just but there are probably plenty of days where I will have a little time during my day, and my goal is to when possible, like have a really nice underdrawing and just focus on the inking. That's my main goal. Let's see. Harleen is getting some crazy rave reviews. It's a Black Label Harley story. Oh, cool. A Harley Quinn story through DC Black Label? No, I'm in the dark on that one, I guess. And to anyone who's seen this movie, you probably know what I'm drawing here. It's the iconic scene of this character literally crawling out of a TV set. Like, we see her making her way, and then all of a sudden she is crawling out of a TV. So that's what I'm doing here. Alright. That might be enough of an underdrawing for me to move forward with. Alright, any questions? What do you think about the T800 trailer on MK? I haven't seen it, sorry. Turn face cam more towards you. Okay, so like more like... See, if I turn it too much, it's in the way of the... or like the light sees it. I'm trying to find like a good angle. But maybe if I shift over here a little bit, maybe that's a little better. Joker movie causing a lot of panic. Not really surprised. It does not seem like a... I don't know. It doesn't seem like something I'm really that interested in seeing. But we'll see. We'll see. I just hope it doesn't incite any violence. I definitely hope for that. That would be horrific. No movie's worth people getting hurt for. Let's see. Care Bear Comics says, the Joker movie doesn't look interesting to me. Yeah, I don't know. Hi, Mr. Tropes. Any upcoming episodes of Scott Snyder? That's possible. Scott Snyder's definitely somebody that I could work on. Let's see. What do I think of Sean Murphy's art he worked on White Knight? I've been a big fan of Sean Gordon Murphy for a long time. He did a great book with Grant Morrison at Vertigo Comics. I remember the name of the main character was Jack, and he was like going into like diabetic shock, and he had like this surreal fantasy where he's interacting with all of like his toys and stuff as characters. I thought that was a pretty interesting comic, but he's a great artist. He's one of my favorites. I love his style, man. Keep up with Comicsgate? I don't. I try to ignore all that crap. I have no interest in it. Alright, let's start laying in a few darker lines here. Oh, this pen is definitely not in great shape. I won't use that one. What else do I have? Let's try this one. I don't want to see a movie where the Joker is more sympathetic. I mean, ultimately, he turns into a killer, so I don't really want to sympathize with that, you know? What other questions? Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Earth. Now that's a good comic. That's interesting. Any chance I'll do an episode on David Aja's Hawkeye run? There's definitely a possibility. Thank you for the support, Poland. Let's see. I really hope after Inktober ends, you do these weekly, as it's fun and interesting. That's my goal. My goal is to do these at least like weekly. The challenge is just the work schedule, but I really enjoy pushing myself as an artist, and I really enjoy getting an opportunity to talk with my viewers. That's a sincere treat. It's trust me, it's a very special feeling to have people that are following your work. It's nice. So I definitely want to give people some of what they want, and so my goal is to do these like, you know, at least close to weekly. I think tonight's drawing is going to be a little like sort of sketchier than maybe my typical style. It's just sort of I'm feeling very, how do I describe this? Like, I want my art to be like kind of loose and flowing, and so I'm just gonna see what it leads to. Take it from there. Inktober Day 1. That's right, Jorge. Have I ever read Frank Miller's Holy Terror? I did, and it's terrible in my opinion. It's really just no good. It's not an interesting story. I don't think it has anything interesting to say, and I don't even think that the artwork is up to his typical standards. So yeah, I have to admit that I am not a fan of that comic. It's kind of laughably bad, and I say that as somebody that really still admires Frank Miller's work throughout the 80s in a massive way. Let's see. Think the big two will be prominent in the next 5 years? I don't really have a good reason to think that they wouldn't. Although I don't think that they're doing a great job, either of them, on keeping up with technology, like being ahead of the curve there. I think that that's something that could like aid either one of the big two, Marvel or DC, is being sort of ahead of the curve on where digital comics and anthologies and stuff like that is headed. We shall see, right? Switch to a slightly thicker one. Let's see. You did the comic superhero Dracula. It was really funny. I didn't know if you know about it. Well, I know what I read and shared with everybody, so yeah. Opinion about Batman Damned. I haven't read it, but does that have artwork by Lee Bermejo, or am I thinking of something else? I'm just discovering Hickman's Fantastic Four and Avengers. How did I miss this? Right? I totally agree with you, Joe. He's I was a little late discovering all of his work as well. And after you've read some of his superhero stuff, I really recommend checking out some of his creator-owned stuff, like East of West. He has some big, epic ideas, and definitely a writer that I generally really, really like. Yeah, big fan of Hickman. So one of the things I really love reading right now is House of X, Powers of 10 by him. I think he's doing something utterly unique with the X-Men, and it's such a fun, pleasant surprise, like to just be reading an X-Men story where I have no idea where it's going. I don't even know if, like, these X-Men are going to survive. It's just really something special. So yeah, definitely a big fan of Mr. Hickman. Doesn't mean I like everything he's written, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. There is something that he did that I wasn't a big fan of, but I don't remember it right now. Isn't Dracula dead in both Marvel and DC canon? I'm not sure if he's dead in both of them, but he's also the kind of guy that could always come back in either one. What's a good X-Men run to start with? Well, probably Claremont John Byrne. Chris Claremont John Byrne is a really good place to start because there's a lot of classic stories that they do together. Days of Future Past and Dark Phoenix Saga are two big ones, but there's also a lot of other good stuff. I'm a big fan of Grant Morrison's run, so that's with New X-Men. It was rebooted, and then I'm in love with the current one. The current one, House of X, Powers of 10, is a great jumping on place. A Wright says, thought on Ed Piskor's X-Men Grand Design. That's a really cool comic and a really cool idea where Ed basically distills the entire X-Men history into just a handful of comics. He has all their important events and subplots, like, because he has the benefit of hindsight, and so, like, it doesn't waste a lot of time on, like, the melodrama. It just summarizes everything. It's really interesting, fun read. So yeah, I did enjoy that quite a bit. Hello, Jalopy. Hello, Hunter. Hello, Z Quick. I'm not a big fan of Grand Design. I don't know why. Well, maybe you've already read the stories. If you have, then I guess maybe you don't need to again. I don't know. But yeah, I do like Ed's work. First thing I read by him was he did a story with the late Harvey Pekar, and it was good. It's real good. So definitely a fan of him. Also a fan of his co-host on his podcast. He does the podcast Cartoonist Kayfabe, and I'm a big fan of Jim Rugg. I was reading Street Angel back when it first started coming out, and was like, yeah, this is fun. This is cool. This is something definitely different, and so definitely a big fan of both of those guys. And if you are curious about another YouTube channel that talks about comics in a way that isn't just reviewing something, but like really like commenting on techniques and history, I think that Cartoonist Kayfabe, their show, is a really solid option. Definitely give that a high recommend. Is that a word? A high recommend? A strong recommendation. So what else? Questions? Comments? Heading off to New York Comic Con. I'm gonna head out to New York this Thursday. Definitely looking forward to that. Got a house sitter to take care of my cats and my fish, so looking forward to having some time off. I haven't really had a vacation or a break, and geez, I can't even remember how long it's been. How am I enjoying House of X Powers of 10? Quite a bit, as I was saying earlier, yeah. Thoughts on where Star Wars is headed? Not sure, but I hope somewhere kind of new. You know, I actually do enjoy the current trilogy with Rey. I like the character of Rey and Finn and Poe a lot. But I'm looking forward to something new. And The Mandalorian looks like it might be exploring some sort of new areas. And I'd love to just see them go nuts with that world. I think it's a great world that you can do more than just talk about the rebellion and Jedi and stuff. So we'll see. Take lots of video at the convention, I guess you're saying. Yeah, I was trying to see if there was like anything I could do for like an episode there, but I couldn't really think of anything that I hadn't already really done. I did one episode where I just sort of talk about all the things you'll see at any convention, and myself and my friends just sort of like took pictures and video to like sort of count up how many instances we saw of like Poison Ivy costumes or somebody, huge lines or overpriced convention food, all that kind of stuff that you see at that stuff. How about some favorite but less known 80s black and white boom comics? Lesser known? Yeah, I mean, definitely the first one that like I noticed when I was a kid was Ninja Turtles, and big fan of Ninja Turtles. Definitely made a huge impact on the kind of comics that I was checking out and stuff. What else is good though? Concrete is something that I don't think everybody today is talking about. That's by Paul Chadwick. I think that's a solid comic worth checking out. I think the early issues of something called Boris the Bear I remember being pretty funny. They were sort of more like parody comics of what was coming out at the time, although it sort of evolved to be like sort of its own mythology. But the early stuff there was pretty funny, at least from what I remember. What else was good at the time that's obscure? Oh, that's a tough one. Asking JJ to answer a mystery is Sisyphean at this point. He won't do it ever. Well, we'll see. If Samara came out of a YouTube video, would there be a Samara for every view, or would she just pick someone? Oh, it would go to every view. Is it true that the New York Comic Con focuses more on the comics business than San Diego's? Yeah, I would say generally it is true, and some of that is just by the fact that it's in New York as compared to being closer to LA. But they definitely still bring, actors and, movie stars and stuff for some of the big panels. I would just say that there's still a pretty good focus on the comics, and that they definitely have a really awesome artist alley. So as long as they have that, Artist Alley, then I think that, the New York Comic Con will stay comics focused. That's definitely something I'm always concerned about, because I get burned out. I have no interest in going to panels in general, personally, because it's not like you're handshaking the creators, and anything that they tell you is going to end up on, news sites and YouTube, pretty quickly. So I'm not a massive fan of panels. I like to look for cheap, weird comics. I like to, occasionally fill in the hole, but like usually it's more modern stuff, like just getting a trade paperback at a good price. Um, or I love exploring Artist Alley and finding something new. Um, it's I'm only gonna go for one day. I mean, I used to go for several days, but at this point, like one day is more than enough for me at a big comic convention. Um, it kind of can burn you out. I think it depends on what you're there to accomplish, and I'm not really there to buy tons of comics, so I don't need to be there for too long before I'm done for the day. But I like seeing friends. That I should say, that's like the biggest thing, is I do have a lot of friends that became industry professionals, and I like to swing by and say hello to any of them that I can, talk about what they're working on, congratulate them on their success. That's something I really enjoy doing, is seeing friends. I'm not going to do a tropes video on cons since I already did one. I mean, I'd love to have done it better, but I still think that I said everything I sort of had to say. So we'll see. We'll see. What kind of music do you listen to? I try to listen to a pretty big mix of a lot of stuff. I wouldn't say I listen to too much country music, but um, I'll listen to pop music and stuff. But I have to admit, as I get older, I find myself listening to more stuff that I grew up with. 80s and 90s for the most part. I listen to a lot of stuff there. Is Kirkman going to be there? I'm pretty sure Kirkman's at the convention. If so, I'll definitely try to say hello. We usually catch up for like just a few minutes. He doesn't really have time to do like lunch or anything with guys like me anymore, but we'll still say hello and just talk about what's up and the family and that. No thoughts on Marvel New Universe line of the 90s? No, I have some thoughts on it. That's something I could potentially talk about someday. I'm not sure exactly when would be the right time that I would want to, but I definitely have some thoughts about Jim Shooter, like the editor in chief at Marvel during some of that period, and so yeah, I would like to talk about him in more detail. Make an episode about Jim Shooter sometime. I think he was just at a big like store signing in Vegas this past weekend. So he's still around doing stuff. I'm not sure if he's working on any new comic book ideas or anything. I don't know. I haven't heard about him doing anything like that in a while. Any chance you're going to do a history of DC Elseworlds? Yeah, that's a definite possibility. I have not read Tom Scioli's G.I. Joe versus Transformers and GoBots comics. I have not, but I've looked at them, and I kind of like the art and the weird, like, anything goes attitude that the comics seem to present. But I haven't read them yet, so I really don't have a super informed opinion, unfortunately. you ever plan to cover what the parody comics? It's very difficult to review humor stuff. Humor is very subjective, so it comes down to saying things like, I found this funny, and then another person's like, oh, I didn't. And you're like, okay. So reviewing humor is very difficult. Like, what you can do, like for my show, is like talk about more the history of it, and like what the behind the scenes story was, like what inspired some of it. But it's very difficult to review humor because everybody has wildly different opinions on what's funny and what isn't. So that's why I sort of haven't done that and a lot of other like humorous stuff, because I definitely love humor and comedy, and it's such a hard thing to adequately cover. Have any of your thoughts, opinions on comics changed since starting YouTubing? Oh, that's interesting. I don't know that I've necessarily changed any strong opinions on stuff that I've actually discussed. I can tell you that, like, in the last, like, this year, I've definitely, like, sort of gotten more back into, like, a lot of mainstream comics and stuff. Like, there's stuff at, like, Marvel and DC that I like. And then, like somebody asks, fan of Garth Ennis. I would say that I used to be a fan of Garth Ennis, and I'm not a fan. I just don't go out and grab his stuff right away. All right, Vash, enjoy taking the baby out of the dryer. Hello, Perry. Hello, Tree Man. I didn't know that I'm not trying to miss anybody's questions, Ethan. It's more just like when I glance up, what I happen to say is what I give a chance at answering. Thoughts on Transmetropolitan? That's something that I should reread, because I do want to do an episode about it at some point. Off the top of my head, I don't have anything to say right now, but it is something that I've definitely considered doing an episode about several times, and just have sort of put off. But it's worth talking about, if that makes sense. Let's see what else. Yeah, Rebel Leaf comments on how Derek Robertson's art never did it for me, and I think I sort of touched on that in my review of The Boys. I'm also not a big fan. I don't think he's a bad artist. It just doesn't really connect with me too much. He uses very thick, heavy lines, and I like stuff with a little more like of delicate line work, or in detail, or at least some sort of like nuance. It's not like I'm not putting the guy down, but it doesn't speak to me in a big way. So yeah, not a huge fan. What's your favorite brand of kitty litter for pooping in? You got me, man. Silverlight says Fresh Step is the best. Hello, Fede. Thoughts on Alex Ross? Certainly a talented painter. Like, no question is he talented. I sort of wish he'd... How do I even describe this? Having your style is one thing, but a lot of times with painters, I see like a little more versatility in like how they approach lighting and subject matter, and I feel like his is a little like too similar all the time for like how he approaches like the lighting. Not every time, just he does a lot of the same stuff, but that's okay. He does what he does. I think he does do well. I am really enjoying the covers that he's doing on Immortal Hulk. So it's weird, he's talented. He's not my personal favorite, but I do like his work a lot of times. I don't like everything, but I like a lot of them. I don't know what the Art Germ covers are, sorry. Bermejo, Greg Capullo, yeah, definitely two talented artists, no question. Did Green Lantern come to mind with the word ring? Yeah, when I started the episode, I said that was actually a character I gave some very serious thought to using. I love horror, and it's October, so I guess I just thought it would be fun for me to draw something horror themed. But I'm winging it here, and I don't know how good it is. So I think that like the head and this front arm are okay. I'm having trouble bringing the rest of it together quite like how I envisioned it, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Will you be watching a lot of horror movies this month? I probably won't be watching a lot because I sincerely do not have that much time. Like, I've got to, do my job. That's why I'm doing this so late. And then I've got to produce an episode of Comic Tropes, which, usually takes me a good 20 hours out of the week, every week. And then I've got to do an hour of this every day for the month, so that does not really leave me much in terms of free time. Plus, of course, I'm about to go to New York and all, so yeah. Drawing TV static seems like it would be pretty hard. I definitely expect it to be. Let me, in fact, see what I can do about locking in some of these details. Anybody else doing Inktober or even drawing? Did anybody else out there draw today? I'd be curious to hear, if you did, what you decided to draw today for any reason. You love the fact that Black Condor learned to fly by watching birds. That was one of my favorite things. That just cracks me up so much. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I've got an idea here. I'm gonna just see what happens as I do this. Then I'm gonna come back with sort of a second stage to what I'm doing here for static. But it's essentially stippling. Let me see if it works. Do you want me to post a link to the Discord? Yeah, go for it. That's fine. Chris Roper drew a ghoul. Fede drew Sauron. Let's see. Samuel worked on storyboarding. Comedic Justice is working on Inktober right now. Black Phoenix says random sketches. James Gleason is tackling the kangaroo, the Spider-Man villain. Oh no, he's just saying that kangaroo learned to jump real high by studying kangaroos. Oh, sorry. not sure if it's totally going to work, but so far I'm kind of liking what this stippling technique is doing. I'm just going to keep at it and see where it goes. Ever need mods? I do, but it has to be somebody I trust, I obviously am super grateful for all of you following, but I don't actually know you guys. So yeah, the trick is finding people that I can trust, because that's a big responsibility that I'd be passing on. It's almost a job. So I'm sure there's lots of people that would be willing to do it, but I just need to know people. No, it's not that I don't trust you. It's just that I don't know you. Let's see. No, I'm not stopping. I'm not stopping this, Ray. Somebody asked if I'm planning on going back to Canada. Like, absolutely. Yeah. So I don't live too far from Vancouver, which is an awesome city worth visiting, and I happen to have a friend, Randy, from Vancouver, so I do like to go up and see him every once in a while. And I will be doing I will be illustrating a short story for Randy in his upcoming comic. There's a Kickstarter that I mention at the end of my Moon Knight video, and there's a link in the description if you have any interest. But I will be illustrating a short story in that book from my friend Randy up in Canada. Ever visit cannabis culture? Well, I don't smoke pot, so I assume that that's what it is. So anyway, the short answer is no, I have not been to there, and the long answer is that is why. And I have zero judgment against those who partake, but it's not for me. Somebody brought up the topic of mods, and now everyone wants to be a mod. Yeah, probably. That's okay. Am I going to watch the Joker movie? Maybe. I'm not going to go out of my way to see it, but if somebody else is interested, like, I'll see any movie. I'm curious. I just don't have a huge desire to see it. Somebody asked my thoughts on Venture Brothers. I'm a huge fan of Venture Brothers. I think that show's hilarious and interesting, and yeah, I think that, like, it's awesome. I think it's awesome. And aside from Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, the creators of the show, the only other person to write an episode is comic book writer Ben Edlund, creator of The Tick. So, just a little trivia in there. I know just what you should have drawn. Just remember the line, "Thing ring, do your thing." Let's see. Make everyone a mod. Don't know if that would help at all. Liked your takes on Moon Knight. I agree the Finch-Houston run was violent, but I loved the street-level grit and storytelling a lot. Yeah, and, you know, that they only kicked off that volume, and the volume went on to, like, run for quite a while, so there were some other writers in there. And, you know, there were writers that have had interesting runs that I didn't mention, but, like, they aren't bad. Like, Max Bemis has an interesting run. And the only reason is I wasn't trying to summarize everything Moon Knight has ever done. You can, like, always either read the comics or, like, a Wikipedia page for that. I wanted to talk more about how, because of his relative obscurity, Marvel takes chances with him and the different ways they've let writers approach him. So that was all I was trying to get across. Most philosophical comic you've ever read? Probably the stuff by, like, Craig Thompson, like Goodbye Chunky Rice or Blankets. Those are pretty philosophical books. Yeah. Well, I guess also you could argue Cerebus is a pretty philosophical book. It's just like one person's personal philosophy that, like, sort of comes to dominate the latter half of the entire run. You gonna read the new Punisher Soviet by Garth Ennis? Probably not. That, maybe someday. Just not right away. It doesn't like do much for me at this point. Like I feel like Ennis has pretty much said everything he wants to say with the Punisher, and at this point it's just to tell fun, interesting stories. But who knows? I could be wrong. I'm coloring a 160-page comic about the history of cannabis in Canada. I like nonfiction. I will say that. I'm a big fan of nonfiction. Maybe I'll have like that as a theme month at some point. I've got some theme months coming up. Well, I mean, like, obviously this month is going to be like, focused on horror comics, and then like next month I'm going to be doing crime comics. After that, in either January or February, probably February, I'm going to have international comics. So I've got a few sort of themes that I want to try peppering into comic tropes every once in a while. I have done a Harvey Picard video. Definitely had a lot to say about Harvey. I'm a fan of what he accomplished, and and I miss him. I miss his work. You are the cool uncle of YouTube. Uncle? So old. What does it for you in a comic these days? That's an interesting question. Great artwork. It's the first thing I'm going to notice. I mean, it's a visual medium. But the stuff that keeps me is just being unexpected and having a solid structure. As long as I feel like I can trust the writer that it's going somewhere interesting, I want him to, or her, to stay ahead of me. So yeah, just unexpected. And so, like, for me these days, that tends to come less in superhero books, just because I've read so many for so long that you start to notice patterns even among good writers. Although there are good ones, don't get me wrong. Like, I've been talking about how there's some superhero comics I love these days. But crime and sci-fi, even a little bit of fantasy, are a lot less expected. So I like being surprised by what I read and not knowing 100% where it's going. I find the long-form manga hangs in the middle. Oops, I missed something. Sorry, guys. Did you know that Spawn just claimed title of longest-running comic book by a single creator, beating Cerebus? That's very debatable how you want to define that. Because Dave Sim wrote and illustrated every single issue of Cerebus. Todd McFarlane has been involved in every issue of Spawn, but he hasn't written and he hasn't fully illustrated every issue. So I don't know that it's quite comparable. It's certainly an impressive run, and I definitely give Todd plenty of kudos, but it's a very different accomplishment. And then we're not even factoring in the amount of pages done by Japanese artists. Something like One Piece probably has it beat by miles. The record for longest running independent superhero comic book. Yeah, that's accurate. It's an independent. Though personally, like, I would quibble over even that definition, because I don't consider Image independent. But I mean, you might. But for me, independent means a lot smaller, and I would say that Dark Horse, IDW, Image, maybe even like Boom Studios and Dynamite, I would not call them independent. I would say that independent and still sizable would be stuff like Fantagraphics, drawn in quarterly, maybe slave labor graphics. Those are like who I would classify as true independence, but that's me. Whoa! Super chat. Gotta read that. First of all, thank you, Samuel. That's very kind of you. And let's see. It says, do you pursue a career as a writer in any capacity? My wife and I found your writing very funny. Well, first of all, thank you. I haven't really pursued it that hard. I did, like, when I was a little younger, I half-heartedly approached it. I got accepted twice at Image, but both times my artist sort of flaked and the projects just fell apart. So that's okay. It happens. But now that I'm older, it's a little harder actually to connect with good artists, and because I'm not like socializing in the same circles as up and coming artists. So it's a little tougher in that regard, if that makes sense. Whoops, I keep shifting over to the side. Sorry, everyone. How old am I don't want to get into it, but I don't want to pin a number on it, but I think anyone that's been watching this channel for a while has a pretty good idea of how old I am. Because, I'll just say this. Like, I grew up reading comics in, like, the mid-'80s was, like, when I started getting into it. Did I pick up Spawn 300? No. Sorry, I did not. So I have not read that. All time, let's see. Not a single series at all, but for a long time single creator work, you gotta love Stan Sakai, Usagi Yojimbo. Totally agree. Yeah, it's a really impressive run. I read the entire Rick Remender's Runoff. X-Force, based on your video, is the most satisfying X-Men related storyline I've read since early Grant Morrison. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites. It is. So I love telling people about Uncanny X-Force by Remender. I feel like it's got a beginning, middle, and end, which isn't something you always get with a superhero title. It's serialized, it's ongoing, but that one definitely felt like it had some closure because the characters evolved and changed. Have I read any MCU-based comics? No, I haven't read any comics based specifically on the movies. What comics out there have been based specifically like on the movies? I guess I haven't read those. Would they just be adaptations, or is there something more than that I'm not thinking of? Fine and glad to hear that Comic Tropes is a member. What? I don't know what you're talking about, Lala. I just wanted to say I can't give any money. I'm currently homeless. Oh my God, Panzer. But retweet so much for getting me into comics. Please cover Gwenpool or Dr. McNinja. Dr. McNinja is something I could consider covering at some point. I like that book. And Devil Superfly for being an ally to all. Well, cool, Panzer. I hope your situation changes. Fede's asking if I watched the Doom Patrol show, and no, I haven't seen that. I've heard great things about it, but I don't have cable. Well, it's not on cable, is it? It's a streaming service. I only have Netflix and Amazon Prime as streaming services, so yeah, I don't have access to those. That's a really big question, Ethan, that like is not super easy to answer because different people will tell you different things. It's a rabbit hole to go down. What's a really cool show? Superman or Batman, says Treeman. Well, in terms of the overall versatility of the character, I'm pretty much always going to go with Batman. I'm a big fan of Batman. But in terms of like the best overall origin story, Superman has a fantastic origin story. That is like a story that does not get old to me to like hear told in slightly different ways. I mean, it's just such an amazing like immigrant experience allegory that is constantly relevant because there's always immigrants, so there's always something to say about how those people adapt to America. I mean, because Superman is specifically American. So, yeah, I think Superman's origin is really epic. It seems to follow like the structure of like Joseph Campbell's hero myth arc, which is kind of amazing. And yeah, it's just amazing. He truly goes through changes. You know, Clark Kent that grows up with Ma and Pa Kent in Smallville definitely changes when he learns his identity and destiny and stuff. I love the Superman origin. I think it's brilliant. And I love that it tells a story of like this guy that's technically an alien, and yet he's the most human of all of us because of how he was raised. And he, you know, that's just such a nice like sort of dream for like an immigrant, like to be like represent the absolute best of us. I think that's kind of awesome. What's a spooky comic that really sticks out in your mind? Uzumaki by Junji Ito sticks out. I would say some other solid options are Black Hole by Charles Burns. What else is really, really good? Beasts of Burden by Evan Dorkin and Colleen Duran. Am I remembering the artist right? Maybe, no, it's somebody else. It slips my mind all of a sudden. You live in Ollie. Do you mean Olympia? I don't think we know each other, Joe, but I am originally from Boston. Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery or Batman's? I would say... Oh, boy, that's hard. I guess Batman has a few more iconic villains, but he's been around longer. Joker is, like, the iconic villain. Like, he's such a great opposite. With Spider-Man, it gets slightly more muddled just because I think that, like, a lot of people want Green Goblin to be his arch nemesis, but I personally think that Dr. Octopus is a much better example of sort of a scientist that's like gone down a dark path and like, you know, yeah, I think that like Dr. Octopus is a better foil. I like how weird and totemic Spider-Man's enemies are. Like, so many of them are either connected to like an element, well, at least nature, you know, like a lot of them are animal based, like, you know, vulture or rhino or something, chameleon maybe, or connected to nature in some way, like Kraven is a hunter and Electro uses electricity, things like that. Miro is headed to work. Thank you for joining us tonight. Ditko has the weirdest villains. That's the truth. Let's see. Well, this isn't necessarily, you know, a fully complete, like, rendered piece, but at the same time, it's pretty much what I'm going to be able to accomplish within this hour. And I was able to, you know, work on a couple different inking techniques. Like, I did some stippling, some cross-hatching, spotted some heavy blacks and stuff, worked on, like, shading sort of like, you know, like, tears, worked on trying to do some like, you know, folds of cloth. That wasn't super successful in my opinion. I could have done better there, but yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna accomplish for today. I really appreciate everybody joining today and asking some questions. I'm going to be back tomorrow at about the same time, so definitely hope to see you guys there. just I don't know, like, what else can I say? Like, I really appreciate the company and the support, and hopefully, the artwork continues to improve, like, each day throughout the month. Um, so I don't have much more than that to say for now. Let's just take a quick look at what the prompt is for tomorrow. I liked doing that last year. I would pull up the prompt and people would like shout out like the first thing that popped into their mind, which I thought was always interesting. All right, so the prompt for tomorrow is mindless. So mindless could mean a lot of different things, but that's a concept. So like, how do you represent a concept? Well, I guess you find a character that it represents. But there's the mindless ones in Doctor Strange. They're villains. I think that there's a lot of monsters that are sort of mindless. Mindless, yeah.